Good morning, everybody that's joined us so far. It's 10:01, so I'll just get going now. Welcome to this financials workshop. The plan today is to run this reasonably informally because it's more about well, it's more of a workshop really. It's more about just walking through the financials, the tabs 4 to 7, and just figuring things out as we go. Sometimes tabs 4 to 7 can be a little bit tricky, so I want to show you some tips and help you to avoid some pitfalls. Hopefully everybody on this call is broadly towards working on their budgets. If you're not, let me see, where are we? We are 18 days, 7 hours, 58 minutes and 2 seconds out from delivery. So if you haven't started writing your proposal yet, please do get on with it. We're also going to cover at the very end of this workshop an opportunity for one-to-one surgeries. So this would be with a small group of EIT Digital West colleagues to help really refine your proposal. And the best way we can do that is if you've got a lot of your content in already, because then we can help polish it. It's a lot harder to polish something that's only half built, as you can imagine. Of course, in between then, please do speak to your contacts within EIT Digital for your specific country. So we've got Victoria, Tessa, and myself, and work with them on a one-to-one basis as necessary. But these one-to-one surgeries that will be starting in November are really important. So we really need you to get as much in as you can by next week, but I'll come back onto that soon. What I didn't mention was my name, which is Martin. Good to meet you. As I'm sure you've seen me already with many of the events that we've run up to this point. So I work for, I'm working in the Scotland office as an ecosystem lead for EIT Digital. I've been working on the Innovation Factory since 2019. It's morphed a bit since then, but I've got a pretty good understanding of the structure, how it works and what works in that time, as you can imagine. But I don't have all the answers. So if there's something that comes up that I can't help you with, then we'll make sure that we can get the answers for you. Also, as you know, from the Open Innovation Portal, there are contacts there within the EIT Digital core team, which will also give you very quick very quick answers to any questions that you have. So please use that resource as well. Excuse my coughing. Okay, so quick, here we go, this one. So the plan is today, and we've assigned an hour 15. There's every chance we won't take an hour 15. If I can get this finished faster for you, I know everyone's busy, then I will, but we have an hour 15 maximum if we need it. For those that, I'm sure everyone has seen this screen. As I say, if you haven't, please get moving, get onto the system, get writing things down. So we're going to be working on today primarily tabs 5, 6, and 7. And within that, mostly 5 and 7 will be the ones that are probably most relevant. And so with that, I'm going to switch screens. So just excuse me for 1 second. It's going to be a little bit of bouncing around to get this done. While I'm just looking for this, could you put any questions that you have that are live as we're working through this into the chat? How we're doing this rather than everyone just jumping in, although it is a smallish group. Victoria's going to ask me relevant questions as we go through so that we can very quickly answer anything that's relevant to the tab or the section that I'm working on. So we want that one. Yep. All right. So hopefully everyone can see the toolkit here. I'm going to come back onto that in a second. That's not what we want right now. Hopefully the screen has changed. So now you can see the proposal submission link. So this is when you've logged into the portal, and this blue square here, rectangle here, this is where you're going to move into the submission system. Hopefully you know this already. Before we do that, we're going to be talking about the finances, and there's a few really quite important documents that you really need to use, particularly as a reference when you're filling in your budgets, because the budget codes, etc., themselves are complicated, and there's a lot of questions that come up regarding what budget, what can go where, what's eligible, what's not eligible, etc. So the two things that you want to have a look at are the model grant agreement. I'm not going to do that this second, we'll do that in a few minutes. And the financial aspects 2023. Now, this is a slightly outdated page, but it's essentially a summary of the model grant agreement. So it's a good first reference. There's some things which I'll point out to you in a second that you should ignore, but financial aspects 2023 is a good first stop before you start doing your finances. So if I click on that, hopefully you can see this page. So forget the first bit. So there's there's 5 main cost categories. So these are the things, when we get into the budgets tab, these are the things that you're going to be allocating costs against: personnel, subcontracting, purchase costs, other cost directories, and indirect costs. So personnel, as you can imagine, is, to be honest, for most of the applications that we get, most of the costs allocated against your activity will go into personnel. But there's personnel subcategories as well, pardon me, which we'll talk about in a wee second. Subcontracting. So this is if you're you don't have the skills in-house and you're going to be using an external provider for that. There are some rules that are involved against that. You can allocate costs against that. There's an indicative amount of, I think, around about 60k, but that's just a guideline. So you're allowed to go above and beyond that, or below that, obviously. But the recommendation is not to allocate more than 60k to subcontracting, otherwise your proposal might look unbalanced. There's specific rules about that as well, about getting best value, etc. That's all in the model grant agreement, which we'll see in a second. You've got costs for equipment, travel, other goods, works and services. There tends to be a lot of questions in and around this kind of area, as in, if I do such and such, which category is it going to fit into? We can certainly help you with that. Sometimes I need to go back to our finance department to get a really good fix on that. It's not the end of the world if you get things in the wrong category, especially if it's a relatively small amount, but if you're allocating a lot of money to the wrong budget code, then you could have problems down the line. Other cost categories, we tend not to see them very often. So if there's something going into other cost categories D, it's probably worthwhile having a bit of a chat to us about that. And then indirect costs, so these are calculated automatically for you, so you don't need to worry about. These are about overheads associated with the activity. And that's related to this right-hand column here, indirect costs. So personnel, purchase costs, well, just these two. So purchase costs and personnel have indirect costs automatically added to them. So that's, I think, around about 7%. You do not have to, we'll double check that percent when we get into the actual the actual portal. But you do not have to account for them. These are automatically added. These, these are for running backroom activities that support payroll, for example, and other things like that. So these are good because you don't have to account for them in your activities. They're automatically added to you for you, which is why sometimes when somebody might put something into subcontracting, for example, and it's recommended that it goes into personnel costs, that's better for you because you're going to get that automatic uplift. So that was that one. Now I'm going to have to come out of here for a second just to show you the model grant agreement. So the model grant agreement is downloaded. A second. I will just share this with you. It is a bit of a stonker, I'm not going to lie. There's a lot to it, but you can usually just zoom into exactly the area you're needing. This is going to get more exciting in a minute, don't worry, this is just a bit of background. So the model grant agreement is that one. So the model grant agreement, it is a wonderful 185 pages long, and it outlines or covers most of the cases, except for some really edge cases. Most of the cases about what's eligible and what's not eligible for funding. Although it says draft, don't worry about it. It is totally valid for the 2021-2027 Horizon Europe framework, so it covers what we're talking about today. I'm going to show you just a couple of things in here. There is obviously a lot. If I were to go, I'm going to just move to the not there, not there, not here, not here. It's actually 32. So there's a bit of information here about what are eligible costs, but I'm going to go to the budget codes because that's what's most important to you right now. I think that's page 32. Okay, yeah. So personnel costs. So we talked about the 5 different budget codes, and these are all covered in here. So for example, I'm going to run through the example of a subcontractor, not subcontractor, an organization that's external to you working on your program, because this is something that comes up a lot. So personnel costs, there's 5 different categories of personnel costs. And you'll see that there's sub-articles associated with them, and you can scroll down to find them, these areas specifically. So the cost for employees, cost for natural persons working under a direct contract. So this would be if you don't have an individual in your organization that is salaried, but you are using them for the project specifically, i.e. you're going to an external organization to use that person, but they're not an agency, that's a twist, then you can treat them as if they were salaried, which is great because it moves it out of that subcontracting category to the personnel category, which means you get that indirect cost uplift. Another one that's important for those of you that are owners of SMEs and don't take a direct salary from it, and that comes up quite a lot. There's a case here where you can allocate your costs against it. In fact, we'll go to that one. So that's 6.2. That's A4. Give me a second. That's A1. Looking for the blue bits. That's A2. SME owners. Okay, must be here. Yeah. Okay. So A4, this kind of sub-article here. So SME owners who don't receive a salary may declare their costs as personnel costs. Now, there's a specific calculation for you. So just note this down. This is page 46 on here. It will be useful for you. Ultimately, what you're looking at, what you're allowed to do is 5,080 euros divided by, you're allowed 5,080 euros a month. Yeah, so that's against 30 days. See that? Just double checking. Okay, so I think essentially your salary is 5,080 euros a month, but you've got to divide that by the number of days within the month you're actually using, and then multiply it by the coefficient of the country that you're in. You can then allocate them against personnel costs. Sounds complicated. It's not as bad as it sounds, but you cannot just put your a made-up salary against yourself if you're non-salaried SME. You must use this calculation. And I'm only using this as an illustration for the amount of information that's actually held within this grant agreement. So please do have a look at it. All the information is in here. And I'm going to rely on you, Victoria, to jump in if you've got anything specific to this particular, about the grant agreement, essentially. Go on.
Yes, yeah. We have some questions that are related to the cost, not specifically to the grant agreement, but maybe we can cover them now because I think they fit into the section.
Okay.
So what's the difference between a project partner and subcontractor in terms of tasks?
So a subcontractor will be doing a specific piece of work for you. Where does that go in? So project partner is, that's the easier one. They're part of your consortium. They'll have funding allocated to them, and they will do a specific, and they will be in the work packages, assigned tasks, deliverables contributing towards the KPIs, etc. A subcontractor is an external organization. So let's say, for example, it would be a website designer. So they wouldn't necessarily, well, they will not end up in tab 5 where you're putting in the budgets. They would be mentioned probably within the go-to-market, something along these lines. So a subcontractor is not a direct beneficiary of the funding. Their costs go into that subcontractor tab, not into personnel tab, and you won't see them directly within the costs budgeting table. That's essentially the difference between these two. Hopefully that makes sense. Project partner, what you want to do is keep as much of them as project partner as possible, but it does make sense for things like a web designer or some organization that's going to do a tiny bit of marketing or something along these lines that doesn't make sense as a salaried person within your organization, and you don't want them as a consortium partner because that doesn't make sense either.
Okay, great. The next question is also for subcontracting. Regarding subcontracting, we work internally with people that are 100% allocated to the project, but they are a contractor for financial reasons in Belgium. Is that allowed?
Yes. So that's the case where you would be, you consider them as, you put them into the budget tab, they're considered as employees for the purposes of this program because they're working 100% on the project. Their costs are allocated 100% against doing work for the project. There's quite a lot of cases where you have SMEs with just maybe 1 or 2 founders, and they entirely use external organizations for software development or managing support or something along these lines. So if that's something that's part of the activity and they are working as if they were working in your company, then they absolutely can be used. One question, so I'm not 100% sure, do they have to be physically working with you? I don't think they have to be physically working in your office because some organizations won't necessarily have an office, but there's a fine line between subcontractor. But no, and it's something, if you've got a specific case, it's definitely worth discussing about whether which side of the subcontractor, non-subcontractor line they fall. But in most cases, if they're working on your project as if they were a salaried person, but they don't have a contract with you as a salary, then yes, they can be considered as in the personnel budget as employees.
Okay, and last one for now. Does personnel include directly employed staff on a fixed term contract?
Yes, I would say definitely yes, particularly if that fixed term contract spans the 6-month period of the activity.
Okay, great. I marked every question that we answered in the chat, so we know.
I see. All right, okay. So that's enough of that, I guess, important but relatively, I don't want to say boring, it's not the right word, but yeah, no, that information is really important. And so you probably wouldn't have naturally come across that had you not done this. And it ends up with lots of questions within the going back and forwards between us. So it's worthwhile just pointing out the MGA straight away. Use that as your reference. If you've got any specific questions because it's complicated, then come back to us. So we are on here. Okay, so this bit won't actually take very long. So I might go back to login screen. Nope, here we go. So you know your way into the portal. I will go back to my old test one. It's not the right one.
Maybe also something to mention, because I just see one new question in the Q&A section of Teams and not in the chat section. So Taco asks, where can I find the country multipliers for SME business owner day rates?
Yeah, we will share that with you. And the reason for that is I don't know off the top of my head where they are. And they are somewhere within the EU, so apologies for that. I will find them for you in a second. I'm just looking for my proposal.
And for the others, while Martin is looking for the right file, please use this chat function. You will see the chat function when you click on chat above, not on Q&A.
Thank you, Victoria. All right, so You know this screen. Hopefully everybody knows this screen. Hopefully you're well on your way through 0 to 3. I've got 1 point to make about 2, where your KPIs, etc. are. Down here, so some of you may have come across this already. There's a small bug in the system. So for example, if I was to click this, you've got target values 23, 24, 25. And of course, that makes no sense because this activity is going to be running in 2024. We have checked with the teams in the background, and they cannot change this for this call. And part of the reason is because previously this system was set up for 1 annual call a year, where now obviously we're doing 2 annual calls a year. So it's I think it's a big job to fix it in the background. What we've been asked to do to make this valid is it will not validate unless 2023 is blank. You can put in values for 2024 and 2025 though. So just leave 2023 blank, put in values for 24 and 25. Then you should be able to validate. Apologies that we haven't managed to fix this in time, but the team are aware of it. So I just wanted to say that, and then we are. Well, I'm going to touch on sustainability for a second. I think everybody understands this from the documentation and the workshops. The guideline rate is 5 to 15%. You can go down as low as 2%, but anything below 5% needs to be justified within the with regard to where your company is, and for it to make sense. The place that you can justify that would be in, for example, activity overview, where we have there's a space here in description, and or within innovation activity specifics, down where you're talking about the financial plan, etc. So you can put in a paragraph in here to explain. It's always worth, in fact, at any point, in any case, to put in some justification for the percentage. I think that just helps the overall proposal. But certainly, if you're planning on going below the 5% guideline rate, then put in your justification here. All right, so moving to tasks and costs. And I know we touched on this last time, so it's actually, this is not actually particularly complicated. It used to be a lot more complicated when we had to talk about something called CAVA. Happily, that was removed a couple of years ago, so life became substantially simpler. So to put in your costs here, we click on each of these. So for this one, hold on a second back. You have your four deliverables, which are based on the information that's in tab 2, I think. Double check that. Nope, yes, activity management, there we go. So yeah, activity management, technical solution, business model, sustainability mechanism. So that's within the outputs. So just so you understand the relationship. So the key outputs of your project go into the tasks and costs, and that's the link. There they are there. If you were to add another one into the outputs, which we don't recommend you do, they would end up in here as well. And then obviously you have to allocate the organization, person, and budget against each of these outputs, and allocate the deliverables to a specific lead. And that's essentially all you have to do. So it's relatively straightforward. So for here, you're going to choose a task leader. Now, I think we've covered this last time. It is possible to add additional people from your organization into this. Most of you won't have done that. You'll just have a single user associated with your organization. So I'm going to go back just a second, just so it makes it more sense. I'm going to add another organization. Let's just do that and save. Back to here. Back to here. It is possible, though, to add additional ones. Now, in the financials summary that I showed you, it said in there that everybody who was going to be allocated funding had to be mentioned within this. That's not true. We checked that for the last call. So if you've just got one person associated with your company, that's absolutely fine. That's the norm. It's only, I guess, if you're, want to be really precise in how you pull this together, then you can add additional people to the proposal. So just double check with Tessa. I actually always forget how to do it, but it is possible to add them. So let us know if you specifically want additional people added. So I'm going to put this against our friend Hannah. So that's just the task leader. So that's the person that will get the initial, who's responsible for delivering against this output. That person doesn't necessarily have to do the work, but they are the task leader for it. Most of the time, that's probably going to be you as the company organization with the innovation, but it may well be that it makes sense for one of your consortium partners to be the task leader, and that's something you can agree with each other. The start and the end date will most likely to be 6 months, because the granularity, this is not a 2-year project where you're really allocating things against a kind of a Gantt chart. But if you want to be really precise, if there's something is only going to take 2 months, then you can certainly adjust that. And so the next section is where you're allocating the task costs. So once again, this doesn't have to be the task leader. This could be just the person. Go back a second. This could be entirely different people to the task leader, but more than likely it's still going to be the task leader. But it might that's going to be put that in. That's going to be leading on the task itself. So once again, just going to assume there's just one person there. Budget year 2024. Now, as I say, most of your budgets are going to be against the personnel part, but there might be instances where you're going to use these other ones. And that's why I covered that information at the start of the session. This is, if you want to figure out in more detail what costs can be allocated and are eligible against different budget codes, this is where you will enter them, and you can reference that grant agreement, the model grant agreement, using these codes, C.2, C.3, etc. And that should take you to the right sections. Not sure. Okay, so there's a small amount of information that goes in against the question marks as well. And this is an important one here. So yeah, so I was wrong. It wasn't 7%. That was a different EU grant I was working on last week. It's 25%. So you get a 25% uplift for overheads automatically added that you won't have to justify in your reporting when you put in information against personnel and one of the other codes, or C, and any of the C codes. Now the quirk is, once again, this used to be a 1-year activity. This is now a 6-month activity. So when you're putting in your personnel, let's see if it's got the information against that. Yeah, please note, consider that the time of activity is not a full year when calculating the FTEs. So here you're going to put in half of the cost of that person's annual salary. Or it may well be that you need 10 people associated with this, in which case it would be half of the cost of 10 people. So let's say it's 5 people at 50k a time, so that's 250. So what we want to put in here is 125. It's going to be 5 FTEs, but once again, that's for a whole year. So actually we want to put in 2.5 here. So that's 125,000. Just double check that. Yeah. Calculate. So the FTEs are to be calculated on the 6-month basis. So just to go over that again, we are allocating to this task 5 people, which we wouldn't, because this is just project management, this one. But we're saying 5 people at 50k a year would be allocated to this. So that's 250k. But it's only for 6 months, so it's 125k. And the 5 FTEs also halved to 2.5 FTE. So hopefully that makes sense. Then you can also add your travel and subsistence, etc. in here. Then we're going to save that. Then you can come back here, but you see it's not validated. So like the saving the main tab lines, you have to do check and save. So yeah, so there's a quick question here from Andrew Pico. Do the costs assume that all employees will be using 100% on the project? No, it doesn't assume that. So actually, if you were only going to be 50% on the, so say it was one person, 50% on the project, then they would go in as 25%, so 0.25 FT in that scenario. Hopefully that makes sense. And isn't it so that the 5 people remain the same, but only the budget changes? Mario, no, because what would then happen is, if I just check and save here, I'm not going to be able to, hold on a second, we'll come back. I'll show you how this comes through in this system in a second. So bearing in mind, we've got 5 people, 2.5 FTs. Just going to, so for the linked deliverables, we need to, so we're choosing, we're going to assign that one. So if you remember, we'll come on to some of these questions in a second. So if you remember, this is an output, and the output has deliverables associated with it. Deliverables are things like a report or something tangible, a video, something along these lines. So you need to say who is going to be actually delivering it, who's going to be responsible for delivering that report. So we'll just allocate the 4 deliverables that are associated with this output. Okay, so check and save. So that should save nicely. Now, if I go into cost justification, now, so we've said there's a budget. So for our 5 people, we've said there's a budget of 125,000 with a planned FTE of 2.5. So that gives us the average cost of 50,000 per FTE. So you see, wherever the question came from, if you'd put in 5 FTE, then you would be looking at 25,000 per FTE. So that's why I'm suggesting that you put it in the way that I've suggested. So you half both of them to make sure that these numbers come out correctly. So for the rest of the way through, I'm just going to double check this. So there's some questions here. Some costs might be predictions, especially if we use subcontractors. Will we provide invoices/transfers in the end to determine actual costs? So yes, so essentially the way that this funding works is that you will be reimbursed for your actual costs. So for example, if you are looking for 400k from EIT Digital, but you only spent 370k, then 370k is what you'd be looking to get back. So it's definitely worthwhile making your predictions as accurate as possible. Now, it is possible to move budgets between funding between finances between budgets a bit. So you know, there's some buffer kind of built into the whole thing, but it is important to try to get your costs as accurately as possible so that you can make sure that you draw down your entire budget that you're looking for. I'm going to just put in one other one. So let's say business model and go to strategy, go to market strategy. Again, who's going to be the task leader for this? So let's go for the same organization. There. Put some information against costs. This one, we're going to use both the organizations just so you get a bit of an idea. So against 5G3I, we're going to say, I'm going to keep it simpler this time, 1 person and half an FTE. As this is 1 person going to be full-time on it and their salary is 50k. And I'm not going to put in anything. Well, let's just assume that there's going to be 5,000 of travel as well, just so we've got a wee bit of variation. Save. Now in this scenario, business model and go-to-market strategy, we're also going to use the other organization. So this one will be here because this is within our plan. Both organizations are going to be supporting each other in the consortium to do this. So this will be Luigi, and let's just say they're going to have 2 people, and so that's 1 FTE over the 6 months, and once again 5,000 against travel and subsistence. Check and save that. I didn't check and save this one. And the only deliverable is this, and we will give that again to IG3I. We're going to, so just to look at that again, in this scenario, we've added both the partners. Now, if you, as I say, if you've got additional people, you can make this as long as you like, but it's fine if you just put the organisation name and the number of FTEs divided by 2 from that organisation that's going to be working on this task and this output. And this, we've got both our consortium partners both working on it. Let's just throw in as well, just for fun, we're going to put we say we're using a marketing company and we need to allocate 10,000 against subcontracting. Before I do that again, let's not do this one actually. This one is a simpler one. Remember I talked about indirect costs. So this one, 50,000 against 2 FTEs for 6 months. Now the indirect costs for that is 13,750, which is 25% of the 50,000. So that's 13,750 that you do not have to account for. It gets added on to the full amount that you're looking to draw down in your eligible costs, but you do not have to report that you have how you have spent this or anything like that. That gets automatically added on for your overheads. So that's why it makes a lot of sense if you can move as much of your costs into personnel as opposed to, say, subcontracting, because in subcontracting you do not get this 25% uplift. Are these the total project costs for the period or just the amounts to be funded by EIT? For example, are these amounts 50%? So Leo, we'll get onto that in a second. These are the total costs. So this is for the whole activity. So if you're looking to draw down 400k from EIT Digital, your co-funding is a minimum of 50%. So let's say 400k, so that's 800k. So you're allocating costs against that full 800k. And this is important because say your activity is budgeted in your estimates at 800k and you only spend 400k, the first 400k comes out of your co-funding, which would technically mean you would get nothing from the EIT Digital bit. So this is why it's really important that you get your sums as close to accurate as you can to make sure that you have spent the co-funding bit and the EIT Digital bit. We'll also see that Leo's question exemplified in the final tab, which we'll come on to in a minute or two. So
Martin, we have also some more questions above. I think you answered the last 2, but we have some more even before that.
Yep. Okay, so Taco, where can we find country multipliers? So we'll share that after the event. Will we need to use standard EU formulas for person months? No, I think ultimately for your allocation should be an estimate of what your organisation is going to need, Andrew. So it's not. I'm not sure about the standard EU formulas, to be honest, but to my mind, the way that we've always worked with organisations is to estimate what you will need to do the activity from the organisations. How do you enter the 6 months target for 2024? Yes, Taco, that is a good question. Let me write that one down. That's one I'll take back. I think what they're looking for is what your full month, what the full year is, but I will check and we will share that with everyone on this call once we've got that one clarified. Any tips on how to troubleshoot when the edit button doesn't work on tab 5? I'll just come back to that in a second. Our partner is in a company registered in an EU country, but they want to engage employees on their payroll of other entities in different EU countries. Is that allowed? Just an EU country, yeah. Yeah, so as long as this isn't a subcontracting situation, if they are being co-opted into your company to work as if they were an employee of your company for the period of the activity, then to my understanding, yes, that's fine. That can go in as personnel. Do the costs assume that all employees will be used 100% on the project? No, you can build up your FTEs based on the amount of time that the various individuals within your organisation will be working on the project. Mario's, we covered Mario's, isn't it? So the 5 people remain the same, but only the budget changes. I know I had to get my head around it as well initially, but no, you have to, the way that they've worked it, we've worked it, is you need to just, these 2 things are separated from that point of view. You need to put in your FTEs for the 6 month as well as the funding against the 6 month. And I think that was 100% of their time, because you'll be using these people for 5 people for 6 months. So I'm not sure. I think we've covered all of that, but if not, feel free to put in the question again. Okay, sure. Okay, so Leo's come in with a question about co-funding. We're going to come on to that at the end. How do we allocate for partner effort spend on the project? So that's the co-funding piece, and we'll cover that in tab 7 in a second. Andy, to clarify, does EIT cover 100% of the spend? E.g., if it's a 300k project, is the 300k covered or just 150k reimbursed? We'll also cover that in the next tab as well. So let me just, so I cannot complete this one because this one here is not validated. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to check and save. We are now validated, 3 green ticks. I should be able to check and save this whole screen, and I can. So I'm okay. So I've got both of these green ticked. We've got some more information down here against the overall cost. All right, so this is for why have I not got cost by partner? Hold on a second. Back into this one here. Not that one. Is in there. Check and save. Check and save. So the reason that I am slightly confused is because cost by partner, I'm expecting to see the other organisation in here. So just as a, just check and save this screen, still not there. I'm going to move screens. Sometimes we need a little kick. There we are. So there's a little bug for you there. Sometimes when the information doesn't come through, the screen's not refreshed, you need to switch to a tab and then come back again. So now this is just a summary of the information we've put into this top area here. We've got the 5G3I and the other organisation here with the costs already put into the system against all the different budget codes. So it means that you can see with a very quick glance exactly how much has been allocated to both of the organisations. Now, if I click here, you can also get a summary of that information that you can then export to Excel. Why is that useful? If you're collaborating with a consortium partner and you want them to input their information, for example, then it might be worthwhile exporting it to Excel, playing around with the numbers together, and then coming back, and you still have to manually copy and paste the information in, but it can be, I think it can be useful to do it that way. So that's where we are, tasks and costs. That is done. We'll check and save. We should get a tick, but I will not be able to get a tick yet because both technical solution and financial sustainability mechanism haven't been completed yet and validated. And in fact, because I went into activity management, not even that one's been validated yet, but that's a simple problem to solve. I need to just check and save that. I'll get my green tick again. And I'll just save that for now because I'm not able to validate it because I haven't finished these other 2. But that doesn't stop you moving on to the other tabs. So against cost justification, we had a look at this just a little while ago. So we have everything that you put into the budgets will be pulled through to this page. So if you haven't started tab 5, this page will be blank and it looks like an error. Once you start putting information into tab 5, tab 6 will start filling with the justification summaries. So we have said that the personnel budget is 200,000. That is for 4 FTEs with an average cost of 50,000. So that's ultimately we said 8 FTs, which would be 400,000 over a whole year, but we've chunked this down to 6 months, which is why the numbers are coming out correct. Except I don't know quite why that's a rounding error there, but I wouldn't worry too much about that. What they're looking for here on this page is just for you to justify the budgets that have been allocated. So, for example, in personnel, the way that it's a nice way of doing that is to actually to say the different roles, as in the job descriptions or the job titles of the various people that will be working on the project and what their salary is. Because ultimately you'll be looking at putting in an average cost which covers the full amount that you're looking for. So not everyone will necessarily have the same salary. So the way to build that in is to look at the average across that against the FTs and make sure it all adds up to the amount of money that you're looking for. Subcontracting the same, we're just going to edit and put some information in there, and the same with travel as well, just justify the travel budget. You've got a certain number of characters. Yeah, it's 5,000 characters. So in all of these boxes, there's actually lots and lots of space for you to justify the costs that you're allocating against these various budget codes. And this page is also really helpful. For example, we are helping you to polish your proposal, and we see that you have allocated something that's clearly subcontracting against personnel. You've outlined it here. It's very easy for us to say, actually, that's in the wrong box. You need to adjust that. And finally, just looking at the questions we've got here. So are these total project costs for the period are just amounts to be funded by EIT? How do we allocate effort? Okay, we're going to cover these and I'll come back to that if we've still not covered it. So in this final tab, the funding tab, this is where you're allocating costs. How much of the funding against each of these outputs that we've just worked on in the previous tab 5, how much of it's going to be your funding, how much of it's coming from national or EU funding or other funding, and how much of it is going to be funded by EIT. The EIT bit is you can't edit. If I click on the edit button here, so that will be calculated. So for example, if the total cost is 203,750 added up, because remember we've added the indirect costs on top of that. So partners' own funding, if it was to put in 100k to this, for example, and save, the little save button here, then actually that was 100. That's 100 euros. My apologies. Let's just fix that. 100,000. Save. Okay, so we're saying that 100,000 of it is from our own internal funding. That's your co-funding, and 103 will therefore be from EIT. So that's how the co-funding and the effort, etc. So this 100,000. If you're talking about an effort perspective, essentially all you're saying is if you've got somebody, say yourself, salaried at 50,000, and you're working full time on the project, you're only going to take half of that as actual cash. The rest of it is effort. It's your evening and your weekend work, etc. Or you're just foregoing what would normally be your salary. That's the effort part. EIT Digital is only going to, the funding will only cover, in this scenario, 103,000 of what the overall salary personnel budget is. Hopefully that makes sense. But that co-funding ratio is not quite right. That's only 49%, and the overall co-funding ratio there is 49%. We'll see how we can make that up. So the other organisation should also provide co-funding. So it's not just up to you as the main organisation. And I know that the assessors prefer to see a bit of a balance between that. And I know that can be hard if you're working with a pilot customer, for example, that don't want to provide co-funding, or it's complex for them. In that scenario, it can be just you that does the co-funding, but in an ideal situation, the organisation you're working with, who's probably getting some funding tagged as a pilot customer, for example, it's not unreasonable to ask them to work at a lower rate than they might otherwise normally do, and therefore provide co-funding. So in this one, so we have a requirement for, let's just hold on back a second. Nope, I don't want to do that. I just want to stop the. So in here, what have we got? So yeah, so at the moment, so against this organization, the second organization, we've got 68,750 allocated to them. At the moment, there's zero funding required, so the EIT funding, there's zero money being allocated, so all of the funding has to come from EIT Digital, so it's a 0% co-funding, which brings that whole co-funding down to 36%. So the only ways that you can bring this up to 50% and make it green would be either to increase your co-funding ratio, so i.e. take less EIT Digital funding, or for this organisation to add co-funding themselves. So let's look at that scenario, which would be, to my mind anyway, the preferable one. This organisation is going to provide, say, 40,000 in co-funding. And as I say, that can be either financial or effort. That's 58%, and that brings your co-funding ratio to 51.38%, which is green, which means everything is great, and you can check and save this, and you should get a tick, except we won't be able to get that because you can't check and save this tab until you've checked and saved tab 5. And that's essentially it. I'm just going to look at some questions that have come in. So I think, Leo, hopefully that answers your question. Andy, to clarify, does EIT cover 100% of the spend if it's a 300K project? Yeah, so that covers, so if this one's a 200K spend, 100% is covered by EIT Digital, 100% from you. So the total costs are 200. EIT Digital, you've chosen EIT Digital cover half of that in this scenario. Mario, I have a question about the pay out of funds. Are you paying directly the subcontractors, or will you pay us when we show the invoices as proof, and are we responsible to pay out also with contractors that are actually seen as employees? So the one, let me think, double checking that. So no, the expectation is that you as the organisation will pay the subcontractors and contractors that are seen as employees. The reason for that is that these organisations are appear nowhere in your in this form, so we have got no information about these organisations themselves. Now, with obviously EIT Digital and EIT in the EU reserve the right to audit, so I'm not entirely sure how much evidence needs to be provided for the costs that are allocated against the contractors. Obviously, you'll want to give them actual costs and nothing more than that. And there's also a bit of a clause about best value. So if you're using a contractor to do a specific job, there's an expectation that you have, and come back to us on this one if you want more information, but there's an expectation that you have gone round maybe a 2 or 3 different organisations to get kind of best value if it's a generic service that's being provided. So no, so you will get the funds, you have to pay the contractors because we don't have the information to directly pay them. The exception there is when you've got your consortium partners, they will be paid directly from EIT Digital. So if you're a consortium partner, you as the lead partner don't have to worry about paying a consortium partner, that will be handled. So regarding the payment of the remaining 40% of the costs at the end of the project, how do you determine whether the project was successful? Is it only by the KPIs that we determined ourselves, or are there other parameters? Do we have to provide proof of our ability to co-fund, and how does this look? So 2 questions at once, Philippa. How to determine whether the project was successful? So yes, you will have to report against your KPIs, and you also have to be able to provide proof that you have made a minimum of 10,000 euros of sales as a result of the project or during the project. You will also, during the project, there will be a number of meetings where with EIT Digital to ensure that the project's remaining on track, and if it's not, then obviously we'll support you to try to keep it on track, so there won't be any surprises. as you go through the project. But ultimately, yes, the success of the project will be measured on the deliverables, the quality of the deliverables, the meeting of the KPIs, and this €10,000 cutting an invoice, a legitimate one, a real one, for €10,000 making that sale. All of that information, and probably even more accurate information that I'm giving you, is all within the call documents. So I would always recommend that you go back and double check the call documents. Can you explain the EIT funding allocated to the partners in this example, as the EIT funding is equity investment in our startup? Yes, I understand that concept, definitely, and it does come up from time to time. So remember that the equity that EIT Digital is asking is in respect of support services provided and not in respect to the funding itself. So yes, if you have a consortium partner, they won't be providing equity, but hopefully what they are doing is providing a valuable service to you, which is another good reason to make sure that they're providing co-funding as well. So you as the organisation are still getting full value of the funding. That said, if this was a typical, inverted commas, equity investment, which this isn't, then you as the lead organisation would expect to receive the full amount, assuming that you pass certain hurdles. But the EIT Digital funding brings together two consortium partners, one of them there to provide value and support to the lead one, the one with the innovation, most of the people on this call, I would imagine. So that, since you're getting the value of that effort and that work, that's you're the organisation that gives up the equity, but the other organisation is apportioned some costs. And in the way that I always think about it is, if this was if you were doing this entirely without EIT Digital, and you were to bring on a technology provider providing an algorithm or something for your innovation, then you would have to pay them anyway. So that's the way I look upon it. You're going to these organizations are essentially providing a service for you. So yes, they would need to be paid. Yes, it's structured in this way. But no, I don't think it's unfair, because you are still, as the organization, getting the benefit of it. That's how I see it in my head. Maybe some other people see it in a different way. And okay, so I am done with the showing the way around this portal. What I'll do is I'll jump out of here and link back to my presentation if I can. Hopefully
we have still one question left from Ben. Any tips on how to troubleshoot when the edit button doesn't work in tab 5?
I'm just going to look at tab 5. Okay, I'll show my screen again. So I presume you mean this button here on the left, this edit button. So I'm doing this on Safari, if it's any help, which is probably an edge case browser for most of the organizations that are using it. I haven't tried it on any of the other browsers, so my first port of call would be check that browser. Oh, the other thing might be that you may have a login, but you're not the lead for this proposal. So only one of the logins, the main one that was set up, has got edit rights on the proposal. This is mainly, I think, to stop, because this was built a long time ago, it's not like Google Drive or anything like that, where you can have multiple people working on the same document at the same time. So I think it's probably a permissions issue. So just double check who else has permissions within your group, and double check if that person has got edit capabilities. That would be my guess. So either try a different browser, or check. Yep, the activity leader would be the person I'm referring to, yes. So if you're wanting multiple people to work on the project at the same time, the best thing to do is to go into the toolkit, which you probably remember, this one here. Down at the bottom of the toolkit, there's a sample proposal here, which you can download, which is the Word document, sorry, here. And if you use that, you can work collaboratively on Google Drive or something like that to work on the main tabs 1 to 3 essentially, and then copy and paste that in. For the tabs with the final tabs, back to here, sorry, tab 5 really, you can use the offline spreadsheet, but ultimately it's going to be one person. You can share that username and password, but don't be working at the same time, please. Otherwise, I have no idea what will happen, but it won't be good. I'm going to switch to back to the spreadsheet. Sorry, I'm going to stop presenting here, and I'm sure everyone's very bored of my voice now, but we're almost done here.
No, we're not. At least I'm not.
You're too kind. And that's this one. And where has it gone? And yeah. So I don't have a Q&A screen, but we're on Q&A right now. So Santiago, don't know if you answered this already, but assuming a project is considered successful after the 6 months, when can we expect to receive the funding from EIT? So let me just best way. I'm going to have to switch back. Not you, not yet. Hold on. So everything is in the call document, and I'm just going to show you that so that so nobody's confused. I'm going to share back to here. So this one. Now, if I was to go back, which one? Let's do here. So back to your main screen. You get logged out after a while. So back to your main screen, Open Innovation Factory, updated Open Innovation Factory document. Okay, so it downloads, but hold on, I will share this as well. A second. Make sure I've got the right bit. So there's a bunch of information in that document around budgets, budget codes and things like that. So there's additional information in there that I would definitely recommend you have a look at. Just checking. No, it's not that one. It must be the cutoff to specific document. Right. Okay, so I will share this with you. There's no really fluid way of sharing. It just takes a second. And all right. Okay, so this is the which is that, page 3. Right. So this is the cutoff to specific document, and got a bunch of important information in there. So I know we've said a million times, read it, and please do. It tells you about the scoring, how it's going to be scored, different the specific questions the assessors will ask themselves. So it's always worth having a good look at that as you go through. Make sure that, I mean, how would you score it yourself? To make sure that you see if there's any weaknesses, etc. No, I've gone too far. It's page 3. Okay, so funding. So EIT digital funding is delivered in 4 tranches over the course of 9 to 12 months from the start of the activity. You get, so it's 10% at the start, then you've got 25% close to month 4, then you've got 25% close to month 7. Remember, this is both your consortium partners. And then the 4th and final tranche, which is up to 40% between months 9 and 12. So that's all been in the call document from the start. So hopefully there's no surprises there. Obviously, you need working capital to make this work, but that's where the information is. So please look at both these call documents. They're so important, and they will answer all of your questions probably better than I have today. And where was I going to also back to the presentation. That one. Where's my presentation? Right. Okay, so hopefully you're back to the presentation. Is that right, Victoria?
Yes.
Fantastic. Jessica, thank you. So feel free to throw in some additional questions if you like, and also we are available at any time. Victoria, 24/7, myself, 8 hours a day. I'm joking. But no, please.
Nice try, Martin.
Please contact us whenever you have any question. Use the central email addresses as well for specific answers. If we don't know an answer to a question, for example, that 6-month target for 2024 in the KPIs, we will be double checking with central as well. So feel free to use all of the resources at your fingertips. We're here to help you. What we're looking for, hopefully, for to really, so as we know, we've got a couple of weeks left. We're hoping but what we're planning on is on the 1st and the 2nd is one-to-one surgeries. Now, these one-to-one surgeries are absolutely brilliant because we also bring in Morgan, who you've met before, and possibly some of our other colleagues too, to really help you to polish your proposal. Now, to do that, we will already have read your proposal, otherwise we wouldn't be able to give you good advice. So we really, in order to do that job as well as we can, we really need you to fill as much of the proposal in as possible. Ideally, and it depends how strict we're going to be as an organisation. I am just the messenger here. We would be looking for all 7 tabs to be filled in. Now, they don't need to all be validated, but certainly give it your best shot to fill in all 7 tabs. And then we will be contacting you on Monday to offer you these one-to-one, really brilliant one-to-one surgeries for the 1st and 2nd of November. We've got times throughout the day, so I think we should be able to make it work for you. But in order to do that, please get information on all of the tabs. And we say this because when we leave it to the last week, they rarely are successful. So we really need you to try to push for that for the moment, and then we've got lots of time to polish. So we've also got validating all the tabs. As I say, I would like you to validate as many tabs as you can, or the official line is validate all the tabs, but I think if they're not fully validated, I think we're okay as long as you've got information in them. In the non-bold, the bottom three bullet points there, start thinking about your investor letter or letters. The templates are within the toolkit. Sometimes these can take a while to appear, so you need to get them and then upload them into the online form. Same with customer letter or letters, template again in the toolkit. And then your 90-second video. Now, you're going to get an email about that, I think, later on today, Jessica. Yes. Is that right? Yep. Just with you a little bit more information about that, so it doesn't have to be Hollywood quality. We've got some tips and tricks on how to do a good video submission. It's not a big deal. It's essentially an elevator pitch for your activity and your organisation. And as you already know, final submission date is 13th of November. I noticed on the website it said 1700 CST and 1600 British summertime. I think the clocks go back this weekend, so make sure that it's 5 o'clock wherever 5 o'clock is in Central Europe and 4 o'clock in the UK, whatever the time we are. I'm pretty sure the clocks go back this weekend, yes. But I might be wrong. Yes. So I think we're talking CET and GMT. The best way to avoid that is just get it all in by lunchtime. That's my final advice. It can be a bit of a rush at the end, especially uploading videos and things like that. They can sometimes be a bit tricksy. I don't know why, but give it, certainly try to get your videos uploaded a couple of days in advance so you don't have that horrible panic on the last day. And aside from that, I'm sure we'll speak to you again soon. I hope that's been useful, and good luck for the work you're probably going to have to do this weekend. Apologies, but I don't think it'll take you too long, especially if you've managed tabs 0 to 4 already. And yeah, I think we're all done. So thank you very much for joining us, and we will speak to you again soon.